Hello, my name is Tobias Heiler and I'm one of the founders of BrainBoost. In this webinar, we will introduce you to our BrainBoost next generation Z-scores. We will show you how they work and also how you can use them already in your BrainAssistant. Depending on when you watch this video, there might be even more functions using our Z-scores. Also, we will give you an idea about our philosophy depending on Z-scores and what our future plans are for using them. Enjoy using our Z-scores and see you next time.
Let's get started. And first of all, there is news for people who are regulars. You know the next slide, but it slightly changed. So we constantly connect new hardware to our BrainAssistant. Yesterday was the German webinar and this slide was the old slide, and now basically overnight we managed to, and here you can see, to connect, and it will be available next week around Wednesday. So there will be an update next week. We managed to connect the Quick 20M by CGX, so a dry electrode all-in-one headset, and also a new company, iMedisync. So some people know about these brands maybe. And so as always, if you know any or you have hardware that you would like to connect with our software and that isn't connected, feel free to send us an email or also connect us if you know people working in that working with that hardware. So let's get started. What are Z-scores generally? Because this topic for today's webinar is about the BrainBoost next generation Z-scores. And so first of all, some people of you know about Z-scores, generally know about Z-scores in Neurofeedback, and a short explanation about Z-scores in general. So Z-scores are also standard deviations, so get used to the term SD, kind of like eyes open, eyes closed. What are Z-scores? So what are standard deviations? So some of you have seen these curves, and then there's a 0 and a plus and -1, plus and -2. So how you can imagine this, and I'll keep it short. I know for people that know Z-scores, this might not be new, but some people maybe don't know exactly what Z-scores are. So imagine you want to measure something. It can be anything. Let's say you measure people's height. So if you say, I'm from Germany, so let's measure all grown-ups male in Germany. Then you say, okay, most of them are, let's say, 1.75 meters. So, and all Americans, you gotta translate it into feet and inch. So 1.75 centimeters. And you say, okay, most of them are like this. So let's say this is 0 standard deviation. So most of my population that I measured have this height. So these are 0 SDs. And then I will set the bar plus minus a certain amount of centimeters, and plus minus that 68% of all people that I measured, my population, are in between minus and +1 standard deviation. So now I don't have to say this person is +5 centimeters taller than my average. No, I can say, oh, I know a person that is +0.7 here, SDs taller than the average. And now if you think in standard deviations, you say, okay, so he's within 2/3 of all people that he measured, so he's not super tall. If I say I met a person that is +3 standard deviations tall, then you know, okay, he's got to be very tall. You don't know the exact height necessarily, but you know, if you think in standard deviations, something is out of a certain range of the population that you measured, or the person is not out of this range. So it is, if you think about it, pretty useful. So you know, always compare to the right population, of course. I will come to that part later. So you know if something is off by a lot, or if something is in the expected value. And we will transfer this into EEG. So you can do this with basically everything. You can do this with body height, as I just did. You can do this with income. If you say, I earn $2,000, well, it can be a lot depending on the country. It can be not a lot, depending on the area. So I can say I earn +1 standard deviation. That's my income. Then you know, okay, he earns a little bit more than most people, but he's still within 2/3 of the people. Or the weight of cars. If you say my car weighs 1.5 tons, and then you say my car is 300 kilograms heavier, then you would say, okay, 300 kilograms. I don't know if this is a lot or not a lot, but if you say 0.5 standard deviations more, you know, okay, it's still a regular car. And now, of course, here comes the fun part. Let's do this with EEG data. So the idea of z-scores hopefully is clear. So here's an example. I can say I have a theta of 25 microvolts. So some people that do neurofeedback say, okay, 25 microvolts of theta is a lot. Well, maybe it's a child, it's 7 years old, maybe eyes closed or tired, so it's not a lot. It depends. So of course I can also say, instead of numbers, I have a person that has a theta that is plus 2 or more standard deviations from a certain norm. So first thought, if I say a person has plus 2.5 standard deviations SD of theta, you would say, okay, I know a little bit about z-scores or standard deviations now. Toby told me about it. So this is, here's 2/3 of all in the population. Plus and minus 2 would be 95%. So, okay, this person has a lot of theta. You should not have this. Still be careful, because thinking in standard deviations can be a little tricky. First thought should be, what am I comparing this to? Is this curve here, so the population I measured in, is it a correct one? The super obvious one is, for example, eyes open, eyes closed. If I have the wrong z-scores and I compare a person that is, for example, male and 8 years old and has eyes closed, and I compare it to female 40 years old and eyes open, then of course this will not match. So z-scores only work if you work very clean, if you work very precise. So this, I want to send this up front. Also something when we work with z-scores and you say, oh, plus or minus a certain amount of z-scores is, this in average, what I just, I marked here a little, a little back and forth, this would be around 2.5 SDs. And in average, this might also be around here, 0.5 to 3 SDs. This might also be on average. So if I just take a snapshot, this might also be on average, if I want to give one number, around 2 standard deviations. So also this should represent that standard deviations can, live data over time, also be very fluctual. If you train for 30 or 40 minutes, then at the end, if you say, give me the average of theta this person was off, this can be the first 20 minutes, it can be here at 0.5, but then the last half, person gets tired, it can be 3 or 4 standard deviations. So pay attention. If you just want one certain mean average or one certain number at the end in a report and you say, give me z-scores about that, be aware that this might over time make a huge change. So it can look like this or can look like this. So a little bit about z-scores. And so we all now hopefully know what z-scores are, or what generally z-scores, not just EEG z-scores are. So I can think in, am I within a norm, an expected norm, or, and I will come to what is the norm, or am I outside of that? And then what's the consequence? And we can also do this for, EEG values. And what do we know? Or people that have been working with z-scores know, usually it's me versus a norm, a healthy norm. So there's a database, and a database where people say, okay, this is how your brain should look like if you sit in a chair, eyes open or eyes closed, and you should have a certain amount of theta, alpha, beta, whatever going on. And people that have been using with other z-scores are used to, I upload my EEG and then I download a report. And for example, red could be everything that is plus 2 or more standard deviations. For example, if this is theta and I see this, I would say, okay, 2 or more standard deviations of theta. So this person has, compared to a norm, a lot of theta. So this shouldn't be like that. This could be, as you now know, standard deviations or z-scores. Now, first of all, and I will come to why we call it BrainBoost next generation z-scores. I will come to our z-scores, how we approach the topic generally of z-scores. But first of all, I know a couple of you that already use the BrainAssistant. Z-scores are already in the BrainAssistant. So I will show you where you already, so do the update, if there's an update still on the top right in your BrainAssistant popping up, how you already can use Z-scores in our BrainAssistant. And then I will tell you a little bit about our thinking of Z-scores, what our Z-scores look like. And first of all, let's get practical. So what you got to do, here's my BrainAssistant. What you got to do is here, top right, if there's update available, then do the update, because this will enable you to use all our Z-scores. And it's kind of been a soft launch, so maybe a few people noticed when doing an auto report, there are Z-scores already popping up in a template. And maybe it's not that long ago that we launched also live Z-scores. So let's start with the live Z-scores. So I'm logged in with my demo client, John Sample. So let's do a session. I select the protocol. You guys are used to that. Depending on what hardware you use, you got to select different caps or what mappings. Let's do a ZZ SMR training. Select protocol. Oh, great signal you see, guys. Okay, so this is my raw EEG. Out of the raw EEG, I can filter my amplitudes. And here, let's go to 20 seconds. So I see, okay, here's alpha. This is 12.5 microvolts. So I'm around 20 or 18 microvolts. But is this a lot or not a lot? How compared to a norm database? I will come to the part later. And what you can now see is, if you did the update, next to these bar graphs, theta, alpha, let's stick with alpha, I can, when I just move my mouse, there's a pop-up window. And it says legend value. That's the live value, the actual value that I filter out of the raw EEG. So right now, what is running in the background. And then I see my threshold is 0.0. Okay, I can just click in here. You see now I have 10.8. And then I see the expected average amplitude. And here we see 16.6 to 5.5. And this is the tiny little marked in the alpha color, tiny little marked area we see next to alpha. Here I can move my mouse. So you see here this tiny little bar, theta, alpha, SMR, high beta. And this has nothing to do with the actual data I receive at this very moment. These are Z-scores that we would expect on this position. We're training on ZZ for a person with that sex, with here in this case, John Sample is male, and with that age. Now here, pay attention. Now you could say, oh, this person has not as much theta as I would expect. This is great because we want to get rid of theta. Be very careful if you use that feature or you pay a lot of attention to that feature in the BrainAssistant, because you need to work with the correct age. And since this is a demo client, it's the wrong age. I just chose a random age. So you now need to be very good working when choosing the correct age. So don't choose 1st of January 2000 for every client you have. So be careful to choose the correct age, the correct gender, and this way you can be sure that these are the correct Z-scores. So in this case, we're not doing a Z-score training. So some people that might be used to Z-score training from other systems or systems they use at the moment, we can still decide here, like an amplitude or a frequency band training, what's the threshold supposed to be. But we now have some sort of an orientation, a lighthouse, where we can pay attention to, okay, would I expect this or wouldn't I expect this? Is this higher, lower? And also where you need to pay attention is this is an expected average amplitude over the entire session with eyes open. And so here, very important that this, of course, will be, maybe for a couple of minutes, be a higher amount of alpha popping up. This doesn't mean that, well, of course, at this very moment, it's higher than we would expect it. But over an entire session, this might be lower. And then on average, it might be in between this expected average amplitude. So don't panic if it's outside of theta for a couple of minutes, because if it's lower a couple of minutes, we might not pay as much attention. And so on average, it was inside this corridor. Bottom line is, it's all included. It's already in the BrainAssistant. You can use this somewhat of a tiny little helper. Think about it like that, and check a little bit if this person on this position here is in the corridor we would expect. So you already have Z-scores, but it's a Z-score guided maybe amplitude training. Now let's say we finish and save this session. You already have Z-scores somewhere else, and you have Z-scores here. This is my session right now. show details, in BrainMaps. So I did here my EEG recording. So let's say we set, I can use my mouse wheel, we set a segment. I'll just say undefined, or let's say eyes open, doesn't matter. It's only a couple of segments, so of course this is just for demo purposes. And I can now say BrainMap, and here, most people of you know this probably, relative amplitude, power, amplitude, 1 Hertz bins, and here you already have empirical z-scores, so probably a couple of you guys have noticed that. And if I say add all, this is now, and it looks a little funny because I just chose a random segment of 4 seconds. So of course, pay attention that segments are long enough, segments are clear of or clean of artifacts. But just to show you, these are now already z-scores. This is why the scale here says -3 to +3. And so if you remember, -+3, here it says 2, so it's a little bit more outside. This is already representing this graph. You can change the scale, of course, so you can say -2 to 2, so this will now change, or you can also say let's go into different directions, and then of course it will be super blue because the scale is completely one-sided. Make sure that you don't miss the minus, because otherwise it will look like this. So pay attention that you choose the right scale. And these are already z-scores. I will come to the part what z-scores, where they're from, and you know how many people are in there. Can I trust that? But this is how you can already see and use z-scores in your BrainAssistant for analysis of QEEG recordings and live z-scores. Also, when you choose to create a report, here generate auto report, and you use the last template, then, or the latest, sorry, template, then you can also find that there are z-scores involved in a report. Whenever I talk about .bata files, so files like a new report template or something, make sure, because I get these emails a lot, to go in the uploaded YouTube video, and then in the description text there's a usually Google Drive link, and then you can just access that and download it. Now, the z-scores are already in the BrainAssistant, but why do we call them next generation BrainBoost z-scores? Well, what I just mentioned is usually it's me and then some sort of database. We exist for almost 10 years, and we've been measuring z-scores for almost, measuring EEGs for almost 10 years. And so what we did is we built up, and we're medical practice. So what we do is we know if people have sleeping problems, for example, have ADD diagnosis, but we also have a lot of people that are high performers, people that meditate a lot and just are curious about their brain. So what we did ever since, because we're medical practice, we tag data. So we know the age, we know the gender, we know if people have their eyes open or closed. We know that people have certain diagnoses. So what we now have is, we have, of course, a norm database of healthy people. It's 4 digits, so more than 1,000 people in this database. So right now you can access these z-scores that I just showed you compared to a person without any diagnosis. But here's our future thinking, because we already have people, but we make sure it's clean recordings, it's enough people, so the population is big enough. Because my example from before, when I just measure 3 people and say this is the average height, it can be a basketball player, and so the average height is off. And now our future thinking will be that, for example, we see, oh, I'm here, I have 2.5 SDs of alpha. So it can be me having a depression, because a lot of people with depression have, it's just a random example, have a lot of alpha. It can be people that have rumination generally, but it can also be people that are, for example, high performers, or that meditate a lot, because they also tend to have on certain parts a lot of alpha. It's just an example. So our, goal or future thinking of z-scores is not, let's find out if I'm off or not healthy. Of course, this can help and also diagnose, but how about me in comparison with high performers? So this will be a future thinking, and of course it's going to take a little bit, but to have some sort of toggle switch or drop-down menu and say, I kind of want to know how my z-scores look like compared to people that meditate a lot, compared to people that have ADD. So z-scores, so this population curve of a different population. And this is new because other z-score databases just say, well, this is healthy people, period. And also our idea, and plans with Z-scores is the other way around. So you just do EEG recordings and our software says, hey, by the way, I noticed that you have a very high match, so you would be very close to the 0, with people that show similar patterns in the EEG, and those people have the following, well, diagnosis or tags, or they're pretty good in a reaction test. So why don't we do a reaction test and check this one out as well? So this is how we approach. This is why we say next generation Z-scores. They should be more dynamic. We think they need to be more dynamic and not just focus on one single population that I define as, well, that's got to be the norm and that's got to be healthy. They don't have any diagnosis. And how do we take care of that? Well, we don't just do EEG measurements. We do with every single client questionnaires, not just in the beginning of every single session, or just the initial consultation. Every single session we do questionnaires. Also, we take notes, anamnesis, and we do this very strictly. So there's not a session where I say, today I don't feel like taking any notes. And in the recording, as people that have been watching my webinars, we use a lot of, we use the flow feature a lot. So we also have a very scripted type of recording. So I have a continuous type of recording. Also, we use a lot of cognitive tests. Usually, you guys know, like Stroop tests, CPT tests, but we also have other tests. So also here, we build up a norm database. So we can also compare your EEG, your Stroop test, and some answers in a questionnaire. And this feature, stay tuned, might come soon, that you can also use questionnaires. So also combine these sort of things and not just have the EEG as a standalone Z-score database. And as you can see here, session 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0 is the initial consultation. We use all these kind of types with all kind of age, gender, and we have been doing this over years and years. So it's not been a 3-month project. Hey, let's do Z-scores, let's collect a lot of data and then, you know, have built up a Z-score database. So we have time, and this is why we're also super strict about the data quality. So we don't make compromises. So when we feel like here there was a lot of eye blinking or something, then we throw it out. So our Z-scores are very well chosen, I would say. And here they continuously grow the Z-scores. I will come to that part. And as I said, since we have been recording these the EEGs, also questionnaires, etc. And as I said, it continuously grows. So it depends. Some weeks we have 3 more EEGs added to our Z-score database. Sometimes it's more. And so whenever you see update available on top of your BrainAssistant, you might not see any changes and you feel like, why did I do this update? What happened? We not just, you know, half a year turnus or whatever. Whenever we have new samples and we have new Z-score database for you, new Z-score samples for you, whenever there's an update, do the update, because you have Z-scores locally on your computer. So you don't need internet access. You don't need a portal where you upload something. So it continuously grows the database of Z-scores we have for you in your BrainAssistant. And so this is what we call them next generation Z-scores. It's a growing Z-score database. And some people that have been working with Z-scores in EEG know, some are from the 80s or 90s. Well, we are generation smartphone now. So of course, there's also different patterns and different behavior that we notice. And we can give, as I said, different diagnosis or different tags to certain EEGs. So here a little bit overview of the future, that we feel like it should be a dynamic Z-score behavior, that we say, okay, let's compare me with other norms, not just a regular norm. Right now, for you, it's just a healthy or no diagnosis Z-score norm. It's more than 1,000 people, so also a pretty big population. And you can right now already do a hybrid or indirect Z-score training, because strictly you don't train towards a corridor to get close to the 0, but you have this, as I showed you in your amplitude training, you have this little hint, what is the expected average. Of course, if you have a person that does a lot of artifacts or something, you got to be careful not to aim too much to these Z-scores. And you have the Z-score BrainMaps that are already available in the auto report, but also manually, so you can play around a little bit with that, also change the scale. So have fun with that as well. Now we're running out of time. I could talk forever about our Z-scores and our plans with the Z-scores. So please always do updates and stay on task, and there will be so much more cool features coming. But I have a surprise. Actually, let's say 2 surprises. So one surprise is a new game. So we call it NeuroRacer, Ready, Set, Go. And of course you can play with different cars, not just F1 cars. So the game will be released, I think, next week or in 2 weeks. So similar with the general update that connects to iMedisync and the CGX amplifier. Please do the update. And in the update, you can then download the game. It will be a premium game, neuro racing game that uses also a controller. So make sure you have your Xbox controller. You should have that anyways for all the flows you do. And it will be available for also people that don't have the premium plan for 30 days. So you can play around with that. We have been testing this for months and people love it. It's very exciting. Of course, pay attention that there's not too many artifacts, but it's also a very nice game from a cognitive perspective to not be overexcited about all that racing situation. So stay calm, keep your cool, and you have also other people racing you. Well, not gonna say spoiler you too much. Just make sure you download the game and test. And then I will answer all your questions. Finally. So now what could happen now? People that have been working with us for quite some time, they keep asking me a question and I keep telling them we already work on that. We are testing, we want to make it super perfect. And finally, and this is going to be the next webinar topic, we have a multi-session analysis. This here is a little sneak peek for you guys. So I know it looks very colorful, and what we see here is you will now be able to not just analyze a single session, but you will be able to analyze session to session. And it's supposed to be very intuitive and simple, because I know people like to press 1, maybe 2 buttons, and then they need a report right away. So yes, we will make sure of that. But also, and you see at top right, NeuroRacer 1 hour, 47 minutes. So I know we have been playing a lot. So what you're going to see here is, at a glance, how many sessions did I do? How long were those sessions? Because our patients, our clients, they keep asking us, how long do we do this actually? I'm pretty tired, or, I'm not tired. How long have we been doing recording sessions? So maybe just analysis sessions so we can create huge brain maps. And here we see this is the famous training effect. I'm going to talk about this also the next webinar. Here, SD, standard deviations. We learned about this today. And here we see a nice trend. So we will also show you, and these are early release screenshots, gonna look even more pretty. And here now you think, okay, why is there 4 sessions, now 2 sessions? No, these are segments. So we can even see tiny little segments, and right now it's not the BrainAssistant. So when I hover, I move my mouse over it and click, I can see what segment was it. Was it the Focus Master, the NeuroRacer, the Media Center? So even in this big, nice looking overview that I can here, you see on the right side, say add to report, and then bam, you have it. You can even then go into details. Click here, it will do automatic artifact rejection, which is pretty cool. So just 1 click and then you have clean data. But of course you can also say, no, I don't want automatic artifact rejection. Yes, I see the questions. I'm coming to an end. So you can also say just certain sessions, throw out a certain session, this was not good. And here, of course, you see, for example, on ZZ, relative amplitude. Next slide, just a little sneak peek. You can also see here, this is F3, PZ, C3. You can zoom in, zoom out, change the scale, whatever you like. And here you see, we did on 1 session a training on F3, then for a longer time trained somewhere else. And you can see this is this one here. But you can also throw this session out if you want. Here, next slide. Maybe you just trained here left hemispheric activation, then for 2 sessions tried something else, then on a different position. So there's so many different views you can use, but there will be templates, 1-click create report function, and this is going to be very cool. So your homework is, and then I will answer all your questions, will be to keep everything clean. So type in the correct age, type in the correct gender, and also make sure your sessions, they don't have artifacts. If you have a bad signal, stand up, make sure there's a nice looking EEG on your screen, because then the multi-session analysis makes sense. And also when you open the media center, it's a little toggle switch on the segment area, and this says eyes open, eyes closed. Use this, because later in the analysis, if we don't know if you watched a movie or you listen to music, of course the interpretation will be very hard. So The next webinar, mark it on your calendar, save the date, is the 7th of November, and it will be a multi-session, it says in German, analysis, sorry, gotta teach you a little German here. And so same time, 7th of November, it of course will also be recorded, and now we will come to questions, I would say, because there's already a lot of questions. So I'll go through them. Will you also sell the CGX Quick in your shop? Yes, you can of course purchase the CGX. A lot of people like to get hardware, training, and of course software from us. So they have one person that I know usually I respond within a day or two. Sometimes I'm on vacation or have weekend. But yes, of course we will also be selling the CGX. So it makes a lot of sense to have everything out of one hand, and just send me an email for that. And of course I'm also always happy to help. And you see my promises that we constantly try to get new hardware for you, also dry electrode, full caps. Yes, I keep my promise, but it needs time, but then it's super awesome and it actually works. So you know what, our guinea pigs, don't worry. How do we configure the games? Where do we find the options for that? Not exactly sure what you mean with that. To keep it simple, whenever here on the top right, it says update available, just press it. And at application, here you will see NeuroRacer, and then here it should say start, because we will activate it 30 days for everybody. Well, you see, nice racing game. So, can you review how to turn on Z-score thresholds during a recording? Yes, the thresholds will automatically, when you are in a training session, maybe just let me know if I misunderstood the question. It will automatically be here. Hold on. The z-scores will be here at the right side, show the expected average value. Maybe I didn't understand the question, maybe you can rephrase it. Jump to the next question and you can just make sure that I got the point. So we will be able to train the peak performer database, not at this point. At this point, these z-scores are norm, so no diagnosis. People that have good scoring in the cognitive tests, people that don't state I have any problems, people that don't take medication. We have peak performers. We have people with high IQ, all that stuff. But as I said, when we do something, we do it right. And so this database with peak performers, high performers, it needs to grow. Here also, side notice, what we also, well, future thinking would like is, it would be pretty cool to also give you the option at some point to say, hey, I want to share this with BrainBoost. Here, upload and share data, of course, anonymously, because this would also be pretty cool to count that people can contribute to this. But this is also future thinking. It needs to be correct and it needs to be completely understandable. So at this point, no peak performer database, but we are working on this because, as I said, it needs to be done. Doesn't matter which of the supported devices we use with the z-scores and z-score recommended training ranges. Z-scores or z-scores. As long as you record a good EEG signal, so no compromise on your side, it will be an EEG. So it shouldn't matter which device you have, because you measure someone's brain activity. So use good electrodes and use a clean signal. Is your current database representative for each gender and age? You have enough 7-year-old males, females, 8-year-old males, females, etc. Yes, it is a database with a 4-digit number of samples in all genders. This is why it took us so long. Sorry, I would say relatively fast, but for almost 10 years we've been collecting that data. So as I said, it's not a 3-month project and we give everybody $100 and yeah, please measure your brain and hopefully you're healthy. So I would say yes, is representative. But as I said, if you have a high amount of theta in some sort of z-scores, it always look at the context, okay? Because if a person is very tired or very excited about something or stressed, then of course you will not fit into the norm. So I would say yes, is representative, but always turn on your brain, sorry, but always think along, does it make sense in that context? And so I would always continuously also take QEEGs and compare them, because it can be a different form of the day. So maybe also after 1, 2, 3 sessions, you can also retake an entire QEEG if you feel like your client was a little nervous. But yes, it goes down to, I think, 5 years. 5 years is the youngest, which also does make sense to have a younger person. These Z-scores, they are included in your either essential or professional plan. So this is also our philosophy. Of course, we need to live off something, but I don't want you to spend thousands of dollars on a new thing that we work on. It should be comfortable for you guys. You contribute and we contribute, and this is the deal we have with you guys. And so this is why we also did a little bit of a soft launch. So I already had a couple of messages, but it's already, if you press download and have the latest version, it's already on your computer and no internet connection required. This was also a question yesterday once you download it. Okay, have a nice evening or morning wherever you are around the world, and see you in November.